great. Is this royalty free? Think you can actually use it? Is that the vibe you were going for or expecting?
You know what? I think maybe it's a little bit more casual than I was thinking. I feel like you're a little bit like, oh man, like so serious. A little bit.
I'm too serious?
Like more not serious, but dramatic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's a little bit too casual.
You know, I've gotten that feedback a lot recently that multiple people have said that I'm all serious, all business. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that was my vibe, but gave multiple data points. The for City Innovations, we had a team dinner a week or so ago, and 2 different people got gifts for the rest of the company. And both people, when they were giving me my gift, because each one was like personalized for each person, they said, well, because you're all business all the time, I got you this thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's who I am.
I've heard that about myself as well. And I don't personally identify with that, but I can also see it. So,
yeah. Well, that was something with your TEDx talk. The MC, I forget what his name was, but he made a comment about how serious you were. I don't know if you heard that when I think it was after you got off stage. He's like, Della, in tactical gear, it was so serious.
There were some Tomb Raider jokes behind the scenes. Yeah. Yeah. I was, they were joking about me giving off Tomb Raider vibes. And I asked them when they wanted scarab beetles to start appearing out of the crevices of backstage. So
that's awesome. Well, I'm excited because you're also the first alien that I've had in here to record.
That you know of.
I know of, yeah. For those who don't know, I think Della is an alien. And I think that's why Della is so interested in creating life on Earth with rebel cultures. So, and Della has not denied it, which is making me think even more that you're an alien.
Whatever I need to confirm or deny or not confirm or deny for the podcast.
Perfect. So today, there are 2 things I want to talk about. First, I want to talk about your experience with TEDx, TEDx Macatawa to be specific. And then I want to talk about what's new with Rebel Cultures, because you were on a few months back and some things have changed, and I want to hear all about it. But first, with TEDx Macatawa, do you want to give the abstract of what you talked about, and then I want to back it up to just the whole process?
Yeah. So I talked about how we can look at processes in nature to actually inspire much greater process efficiency for our processes that we create as humans, basically. So everything we do is a process, from how we get up in the morning to how we perform very specific industry-related tasks. And a lot of those processes have not been around for very long, especially in context of how long things like photosynthesis and plants have been around, how different organisms sort of feed themselves. So something that's been in R&D for millions and millions of years is very likely to have had breakthroughs that a process that's only been around for 100 years or less has not. So being able to sort of learn from those millions of years of R&D makes perfect sense, whether you're looking at processes in your own life or in industry.
No. Well, you're giving the abstract and you're going to talk about some of the highlights today, but people need to watch the video on YouTube because you gave a performance. That was crazy. Just the energy you brought. You got double not standing ovation, but double rounds of ovation from the crowd. You're the only one to get it. So you were awesome that day. And I want to talk more about that. But one of the things that stood out in the talk, I think the first thing that stood out to me, besides your overall performance, was the line about we are interns in the in this I don't know what you call it, like in the ecosystem, but the plants and everything else, all these organisms have been around for the millions of years. And well, I think you equated it to I'll let you say the line. How many years of experience it was?
Sure. So when you, man, like this, the specific line or like just the sort of overall?
Okay, I'll say it. So you said that if we were to look at all these organisms as employees at a company,
Yeah.
some of these organisms would be with the company for 33 years and others would have been here for only 11 days. And the humans have been here for only 11 days.
Yep.
Yeah. And so we are the interns of the ecosystem.
Right. Yeah. So if you look at how long each species sort of on Earth has been designing process, I think my example was a grasshopper. So if you look at a grasshopper who's been designing how to live and how to get food and how to create homes, it's 300 million years of experience as opposed to much less for people. And when you sort of shrink that down into, I believe, workplace seniority was the comparison, the ratio sort of can be boiled down to 30 years of experience, or in the case of like fungi, even 45 years of experience or more versus 11 days. And no one's going to argue that 11 days of experience is going to compare to 30 years. So like, who are you going to ask when you're designing something? And I think that most people make the mistake of only asking other people. We ask our parents, we ask our coworkers, we ask therapists, we look at big companies like Apple and Amazon. We're like, oh man, they're so big, they're so established and successful. But what if they had millions of years of experience? How much more established and successful could they possibly be? So I think just overlooking the experience and industry of much more experienced species is an oversight that we can sort of start to correct for ourselves.
Yeah, equating humans to being interns in the system made so much sense to me.
Yeah.
Is that the type of like enthusiasm and also anxiety we're bringing to the equation? We're just like, all these new ideas, we got to go do this, and then there's just the old wise one in the room just saying like, oh, we got that figured out. There's a process for that. There's a system, and I can. That really stuck with me. I was like, oh, that is exactly what humans are doing here.
Mm-hmm.
Have you received any critical feedback about some of these analogies because you made a bunch of analogies, metaphors throughout your whole presentation? Has anyone pushed back on anything that you said?
Somebody came up to me in the lobby right after the talk and they said, so did you figure it out yet? I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, did you solve it yet? I'm like, well, no. So, I mean, it's a process of learning and extracting information and leveraging it in a way that sort of helps move our technology and our way of thinking about things forward. But I think in terms of pushing back on the metaphors, I really tried to be careful to pick things that would be a little bit jarring, but not like offensive. So I haven't really received anything crazy negative about it.
Okay. Yeah. And I don't have anything critical. I was just thinking, people could probably expand your metaphor of the workplace out and say, well, the person that's been with the company for 33 years doesn't always know better, right? They may know better than interns, but there's maybe someone with a couple years of experience who does know more. But I wonder if the analogy breaks down there because the job to be done, the work hasn't changed. Like in our workplace, the reason why the person with 33 years of experience is no longer relevant in some situations is that the environment around them has changed and the work to be done has changed. Right. Different technology, all that. But the world is relatively stable. The work to be done is still the same.
Well, and how we evolve is a process as well, right? Because it's normally the people who have just entered the workforce or they've reached that critical mass of years of experience. Maybe they have 5 years of experience and they just got that, C-level position or, a pre-C-level position. They're the ones who are making changes really quickly. And that's why those years, those 30 to 40 years of experience might be less relevant because the job to be done has changed. So, I mean, the metaphor holds up, but it also breaks down in that people who are just entering the game only know that set of rules for when they entered it, which is different than maybe the one with more experience. But the rules of how to transport things and eat and adapt and survive have not changed. Yeah.
Okay. What was something that you thought people would be excited about or would talk to you about after the talk, but just didn't land? Was there anything that you thought, like, I got a good idea here, and then no one's brought it up since?
The most common feedback that I got was that they didn't really know at all about what we were doing after the talk. And there was one line that I forgot. So I'll tell you about, the whole almost forgetting every single line thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was one line that my brain just sort of omitted. And it was that what we're doing is we're actually translating that human knowledge of lab practices to an environment that's proven that those needs for ultra clean laboratory environments doesn't need to exist. So in doing that, we are sort of positioning ourselves to save a ton of cost with the most efficient method known to people of plant propagation today. Yeah, that was the line that did not make it out of my mouth.
Yeah, you didn't talk about revolcultures at all. And we had talked in advance of TEDx, and I know you were debating how do you weave in Revel. You don't want to make it all about you or all about the company. You want this to be informative. So I was curious how you're going to strike the balance, and you ended up just omitting yourself altogether.
I mean, not altogether. It's how we approach things. And I think that how we approach things ultimately shapes everything about what we're doing. And at this point, we're really looking for collaborators more than anything. So just getting people in this mindset to solve problems in this way sort of was the mission, and sort of equipping people with another strategy for overcoming our unsolvable challenges today.
Well, let's talk about how you approach TEDx.
Yeah.
I haven't had to give a speech like that before. It's an interesting challenge because you're trying to be informative and provide some kind of entertainment and education. It's a interesting mix, and you're not supposed to highlight yourself too much.
Yeah.
But it is a great platform for you to get exposure. So can you tell me about how you prepared for it? Because you nailed it. I thought it was amazing. So what did you do, and what would you recommend for anyone else?
Yeah, so I sort of heard that TEDx was in Holland previously from somebody at Surge with Lakeshore Advantage. So it was Dean Whitaker. He was telling me about a previous experience giving a TEDx talk, and it sort of seeded in my brain, oh, maybe that would be good. If I see that opportunity come by, I'm going to see who I can contact or apply for that somehow. I saw the post on LinkedIn that they were soliciting speakers, and I applied. It was a Google form application, which I always love. I'm like, okay, yes, someone's going to actually read this. This is great. It's not just going to go into like some spam inbox somewhere. So I got an email a few weeks later saying that I had made it past the first elimination round. I was in the top 30, and they would need a 90-second video pitch of the talk. So that's when the actual work started, because before that, with my application, I had sort of just grabbed excerpts and bios from my other talks just off of my Google Drive. So I actually had to package something nice, and I did pull a prop in, and I had my computer monitor. I think it said what can we learn from nature? It was all very pick me, you want to know more, right? And it worked. So I believe that there were somewhere around 80 applicants, and I was in the top 8, which was cool. Yeah, so feel very lucky to have done that. With the video pitches, everyone was uploading them to a shared video drive, so I could watch everyone's pitch. So like you can see sort of the competition roll in. A few people submitted theirs really early, so I could sort of choose what to copy and to definitely not copy. So that was helpful and fun and a little nerve-wracking.
Nice. You did some reconnaissance. And you've spoken at conferences before, right?
Yes. This was my 7th talk this year. Okay. It was my first non-conference talk.
Okay. What was the biggest change or difference between a conference talk and doing the TEDx?
Oh, man. It was a huge shift from education with a little bit of entertainment just to keep people engaged to entertainment with a little bit of education. I feel like that was the biggest mindset shift I had. And we had a rough draft, pitch session with all of the selected speakers. And you needed to bring 5 minutes of your talk to do. And this was like a month or two, month and a half maybe before the final event. So I was by far the least prepared of anyone in that group. I feel like my talk changed the most. But it was like, sort of a more interesting version of the industry talk is what I was sort of giving. And it was rushed and sloppy, and I was reading off my notes, and everyone's like, what are you talking about? It was brutal, but I honestly left feeling like, okay, great. I get to start over. This is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to keep saying this. You totally transformed. Like, you're one of the smartest people I know. I love every conversation we have, but you went full performance mode. Growing up, were you like a theater kid or anything like that?
Oh my gosh, no. And that was, okay. So we were lucky enough to have sort of access to this coach who was sort of helping to corral us throughout the time. His name is Patrick, and he was making himself available to help with the theatrics and with the structure of the talks. I met with him a couple of times, and the first time we met, he asked me if I was typically a very serious person. I'm like, I don't think so. But he's like, we need to loosen you way up. Yeah. This is like gonna be fine. But yeah, he made me practice like standing totally still, not waving my arms around. And then made me pick, a word or two in every sentence to really emphasize. Made me, stop and look at a specific person in the audience for the last 3 words of every sentence. So lots of tricks. But I feel like the theatrics thing, I hate it.
Yeah.
I can be animated in a very specific way. I feel like I learned that in past leadership positions. Like, you gotta be able to hype people up if they're going to get on board with something. But like acting or choreography, there's something that just in my bones, I just reject it.
Well, you can disagree with me, say I'm wrong, but my understanding of you is you hate anything fake or inauthentic or just performative. Like, why are we doing this small talk? What is it? Like, any of those things, I can see it just like grinds your gears. So, and you had to go give a performance, but I feel like it was still an authentic performance. It was still you. It was just you turned up 10 notches or whatever it was. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm super curious about how you shifted from serious to entertaining, because this is something I struggle with. So any quick tips or what worked for you to to loosen up?
So I actually had lunch with one of my friends a few weeks before the talk. And that was like, the script is written. I'm just sort of performing it at this point. It wasn't memorized until, maybe a week before the event. But I found myself in that very specific context with that friend in the middle of the day. I think she was sort of low energy. And I was talking to her about something and I got really excited about it. And I was like, can you even believe that this is the way people do things? And I was sort of like what you said, not wanting to be fake and not wanting to just like lean into the melodrama for melodrama's sake. It's like, all right, what's an example of a time in my life that I can remember where I was like actually happy to be animated about something? And I feel like I latched on to that moment, in that booth with my friend. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to give this talk to her, for her, in that voice and see what happens.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's a good trick. Last week I was recording something and Evan, who's in the room, was giving me some directorial advice. And he's like, he was telling me like, be more personable and be more exciting. And his approach was just keep telling me to be better. So don't know if I recommend that coaching advice. It worked, and I appreciate it, Evan. I do think the finished product turned out great. But yeah, I'm always looking for tricks. Like, how do you, if your normal affect is, pretty flat, not that excitable of a person, how do you get to that place where it's exciting and fun?
Pay attention to when you have said something that felt exciting as it was coming out of your mouth, because you can't help but smile and you can't help but like want to scream a little bit. So pay attention to those moments and just sort of latch onto that energy maybe.
That's great. Yeah, you're a whole different person on that day. Loved it. Did you see the people in the crowd?
You were in the first row.
Yeah, I was. Not by choice. I got there late because I was coming from another meeting, and our group of people at Surge had all gathered in the second row. And so I had a text from Amanda. It said second row. So, okay, so I walk up thinking they saved a seat. They didn't save a seat for me. And everything's about to start, and the front row is completely empty. I was like, are they saving this for the speakers? Why is this empty? I was like, whatever, I'll sit down. People can kick me out. Yeah, it's just right there in the front row. No one's sitting around me. But yeah, it was nice. I had a great seat. So I was like, I hope this helps Della. I hope it doesn't hurt Della that someone she knows this well is right there. But
yeah, it was very helpful. I feel like I was lucky enough to see sort of some familiar faces. I could see the faces of the people into about row 4. And then beyond that, I could sort of see the outline of like my mom's hair, like back, halfway back in the center. So I'm like, okay, I sort of know, it's sort of this natural attraction to sweeping the crowd. Not that I would have not done that. It's just like former lifeguard days. You just gotta see your whole zone. But yeah, no, it was nice to see people like wide-eyed and nodding along who I knew.
Yeah, people were really engaged with your conversation or with your presentation. I saw for a couple of the other presentations, people would like pull out their phone and they were scrolling through and stuff. Yeah, no. Especially like people in the front row. I'm like, what are you doing? Come on. Speakers can see you, like pay attention. So,
yeah.
But everyone was really engaged and you were emphasizing certain words in the sentences. I do think, you said you omitted one line, and I do think with your presentation, omitting one line did matter because I think people were listening to every line. They weren't just like, oh, what's the big idea here? Let me look at the slides. I think they were actually engaging with each line. So it mattered. And you didn't have a prompt or anything? It was all
correct.
Wow. Impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, from my perspective, so you walk out on stage and you did like a power walk out onto the stage, and then you anchored your left foot, then anchored your right foot, and you're like, I'm here. And it was, I was like, all right, she's ready to go. And I think you may have started off with like a big question and you were speaking like slow, I think. And then you were at one point in your presentation, you just paused Do you remember that? Like
Yeah.
you had your hands like above your head and you just paused. And everyone waited with bated breath for you to continue on. So it was good. The only thing that I thought in the performance that was maybe a miss was that you had like a pine cone in your hand. And I think that was one of the worst visual props you could have had because people at a distance cannot tell what that is.
Yeah.
And even on camera, I'm guessing that it didn't really pick it up.
No, not really. But okay, so I was lucky enough that I didn't talk quite as fast on stage as I had with my rehearsals, which is kind of the opposite. So I needed to cut a little bit of it for the final, edited cut for my talk. So I did cut that out.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Okay. Probably a good choice.
Yeah, I think maybe not. I don't know. No, not the whole thing. Part of it's still in there.
Okay. Well, anyways, that was the only thing that I thought was maybe a little bit of a miss.
That's fair. What do you think would have been better as like a pocket-sized visual that people could have identified with?
I forget exactly the analogy you were trying to make, but because that was representing something, but I think even just like a small plant, something green shaped like a plant, I think would have been better. I know you're limited because you had to pull it out of your pocket, but if you had the ability to just grab something off like the table next to you, I think that maybe would have helped. But the drawing the whole crowd's attention to your hand, I thought was a powerful move. I really like that. But then it was just a little pine cone.
Yeah. Well, it's actually a Sequoia pine cone, which was like the picture of the tree that I had in there. But the audience doesn't know that. It was specifically like a nice object to have in my pocket on the day. It felt comforting. And the orientation of the table moved around. Like even the day before, it's like I was going to have access to the plant on the table, and then the table moved. And I'm like, all right, so pocket stuff it is.
Yeah. No, I thought it was all great. And then the crowd clapped for you, and then they clapped for you again. I couldn't believe you got 2 rounds. Could you hear that when you were back there?
No. I obviously could hear it walking off stage, but not once that door is closed. It's pretty soundproof. I think I may have like run out of there as fast as possible too after I got unmiked.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really couldn't believe that it was really done. And like the 5 to 10 minutes that I was off stage before going on, I could not remember a single one of my lines. I could not remember a single one. So I actually went back to the dressing room and got my script and was like paging through it backstage. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I've practiced this so many times. And then Patrick again was just like, just think about your first line, just over and over again, first line. I'm like, okay, I'm going to walk out there confidently and we're going to see what comes out of my mouth. And yeah, just one line after the next. Most of them made it.
Wow. Good job. It must have been a nerve-wracking feeling though when you couldn't remember the lines.
It would have been funny to not remember any of it.
Yeah, would have been funny. Yeah.
So
so what came out of it? You gave the talk. I'm guessing you would be happy to do another talk like that again in the future. What came out of it?
A few people have reached out, not like ideal partner customer type people, but more local business people who want to see if there's a way that they can maybe help. So that's been nice. I've had a chance to meet with one of them, a meeting with another one on Monday. And yeah, a few people have just engaged on LinkedIn as well.
Anything else you want to talk about TEDx? I want to switch over to Rebel Cultures, but
yeah, it was a great opportunity, and I'm looking forward to baking some of that into future even industry talks. So it was a great opportunity. Would highly recommend it for anyone who wants to do something scary.
Yeah, it does look scary, but you nailed it. Okay, TEDx next year if they do it again, I'll apply, and then you could coach me the whole time.
Sure. Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Hey, why are you saying it like that?
Oh,
You
well,
have no faith in me?
I have all the faith in you.
Okay.
We'll just see how well, I'll just leave that up to your imagination for everything that could go right there.
Okay, great. All right, switching over to Rebel Cultures. The first time you did the podcast, you had this big box that you were showing off, and it was the solution to all plant replication problems in the world. Not your words, my words. And you were bringing that product to market. Where does that stand? What are you doing now?
It stands in my basement next to another one, a very close clone, also in my basement. And those models have somewhat been retired in favor of a much cheaper and easier to test on prototype that we've sort of assembled. Just my teammate did a lot of the recon for basically an answer to the question, if we could 10x the speed that we're doing our testing, what would that prototype need to be? And what also would it need to be if it was less than $200 to assemble this testing rig? So that's what we're doing now is we're continuing R&D on a much simpler prototype. And we're looking for ways to sort of expand that concept into even more testing capacity with better data collection. So on the R&D front, that's what happened to the box.
Yeah. And are you, maybe it hasn't started yet, are you replicating plants on behalf of other companies? Are you offering that service right now?
Sort of.
Okay.
We're doing like a feasibility study. So we are basically developing protocols for plant replication. And the testing rig that we have set up is pretty cool because it has sort of this central compartment that can feed humidity into several different test chambers. We can actually run 10 test chambers off of a single unit. And so we can test 10 different like nutrient profiles, decontamination, methods, things like that all at once. So we still have a bunch of little Sequoia trees in the basement that we're developing protocols for.
Okay. I saw a post on LinkedIn that said 2-inch tall, 4,000-year-old trees. That's what you're referring to?
Yeah. So our partner, Archangel Ancient Tree Archive, they are sort of expanding their plant tissue culture laboratory. So actually, it was my teammate Rachel saw them posting on Facebook, and they were sort of looking for any feedback or advice on plant media suggestions. So the plant nutrients that are in the traditional gel in a laboratory. And she said, should we meet with these people? Maybe we can help them. We actually ended up bringing one of those big boxes, those replicators, to their site. He said, hey, don't know how exactly it would work to work together, but you want to try? And they were all about it. So we're currently helping them optimize their laboratory side of things, as well as developing protocols for hopefully an alternative to that very expensive laboratory process that's happening.
That's awesome. So that's what's working well. What in the last few months did you think was going to be an awesome idea that turned out to be a bad idea?
I got really excited about a group that reached out to me about small business advocacy because it seemed like they were talking about all of the different, like working with the SBA and all of the different sort of things that I've been through recently. And I'm like, oh, they're following me. They sort of see what I'm up to, and they genuinely want my help with this thing. And I sort of helped with this application, and I had this phone call with a person, And at the end, I was like, oh my gosh, this is just a membership drive. And I'm so stupid. And I'm so mad that this isn't real. And all you want is my money. So that's something that was disappointing. And then other things, both of our SBIR grants fell through. So that was not fun. But it's also okay because I was still trying to figure out exactly what we were, what exact value we were able to plug into these different types of verticals, because plants are sort of plants when it comes to propagation, but people don't see it that way. So we were proposing to do our tests on horticulture plants, basically garden plants, because that's where my background is. And we were talking about these implications for forestry and for agriculture. So like non-seed agriculture crops like fruit trees and nuts and blueberry bushes and hops. And the feedback from the review board specifically said, you're not going to save the world with garden plants.
Wow.
And I totally agree. It is really good for supporting pollinators sometimes, but it's asking too much mental gymnastics to say, hey, we're going to do tests on these horticultural, beauty crops, but we really want to actually help out the greater agricultural community and forestry and conservation. So I think that's been a big shift for us, is looking more at the business case for those verticals now. So for things like almond production, there's a huge, demand for almonds, but the prices for farmers are super low. Big like plantations of almond trees are getting ripped out in favor of things like pistachios, which can sell for a higher price. But what happens when those prices volley and all of a sudden you need way, way, way more almond trees than you thought you would need 2 years down the line? So sort of positioning ourselves to work with collaborators who have interests in almond production, or things like forestry and timber production. We have this huge global seed shortage going on. And there's a big concern with biodiversity with traditional tissue culture, but with our method where you can very cost effectively introduce a bunch more parent plants, it could be really helpful. But I would say like the biggest mistake is not being more crystal clear on exactly who we're looking to partner with, because we really are okay with partnering with anyone, but that doesn't really work for a business.
Yeah. Well, and you got that feedback that garden plants are not going to save the world, but you are trying to save the world and make a big impact. So I imagine you took that feedback to heart.
Yeah, definitely. Everything you love is a plant or relies on plants. So yeah, what we're doing will make a big impact. We just need to be able to pull it off and work with the right people to do it.
Well, I think that's also why people think you're serious, Della, because you go around saying, I'm going to save the world. That's what serious people say.
I mean, I'm not going to save anything. I'm just trying to get some ideas out there that will enable other people to make impact. So, I mean, yeah, all of this is very intrinsically motivating to me because I love how business works, and I love how plants work, and I love the thought of people being happier with their work. And so I'm motivated to help on those fronts and work in those domains, but I'm under no illusion that I'm going to do anything alone.
Yeah. Looking ahead to the next 3 to 6 months, what are you betting on working and transforming your company?
I am betting on this next testing prototype, being able to collect the data we need. So I'm betting on that. I'm betting on being able to talk with the right people at these very sort of niche conferences that we're looking at now. And these more serious conversations that we're having, more people have reached out to me about like, oh, you're really sort of establishing yourself as an expert in this domain. I'm betting on some good things coming out of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a chance here. Evan, do you have any questions for Della? What's one thing you want to know? You've got Della, the plant tissue culture expert, who's one day going to save the world. What do you want to know?
I would like to know like what your day-to-day looks like.
What day? Yeah, definitely. So I'm yeah, definitely. Right now it's myself and my teammate. So some days, like I'll give you sort of just totally blanking out. Sorry. So on any given day, we might be going up to see our client and working with them sort of one-on-one in their laboratory. Or I can be, so that's like one type of day is like a travel work with a client day. Another type of day is working by myself at my house kind of day, where I sort of try to clump together all of the like administrative stuff. Like if I need to fight with an administration thing or, get a bunch of, meetings booked with people or sort of tackle some other type of registration that I need to do for this accelerator program that we're in. I'll sort of try to clump all of that together and then like spend a solid few hours at least working on like a big project. And that can be something like making sort of this like outreach strategy for different people in different verticals, or we're working with LenGR now. So we have this freelance and GVSU student who's in branding and marketing. And so I have to get her like directions on how to, who to reach out to and why for different things. And then another kind of day is my teammate comes over and she's doing a lot of work with the prototype and with plant stuff. I'm sort of helping to support that. There's maybe a little bit of like research going on, troubleshooting about like, oh, what does this mean? This article that I read about electromagnetic frequency and enhancing plant growth, and sort of do a deep dive into what that might mean for what we're doing. So I feel like those are the types of days that I have. Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're going to wrap up. What else do you want the world to know?
Just because you are a human doesn't mean you always have to think like one. That's what I want the world to know.
I'm just going to end it right there. That's powerful. All right. Well, thanks, Della. I appreciate you coming here, and anytime you want to come back, it's here for you.
Thanks for the time.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right.